Hey there, I'm Douglas from Draftbit. Today, I'm going to walk you through using the image component. This is a perfect component for displaying images on your screen. It supports various formats like PNG, JPG, BMP, GIF, and WebP. You can use images you've uploaded to your project assets. So here we have project assets images, so you can use these images, or you can use images on the web using a URL. Let's dive in and add the image component to our screen. So you want to go to the component picker. So here on the left side, this is the component picker. You click add, then you search for image. You click the image component, and then it gets added to our screen. Now let's set the image source in the data tab. So we go to our image, we go to the data tab, and then we can set the URL. So there are different ways where we can add an image to this image component. The first is static. So static, we use this if you want to display an image you've uploaded to Draftbit assets. It's bundled with your app, so it will be stored within the app's code. The next is the remote URL. So this is what we have right now. So this option is for linking an image that is hosted online. So instead of being bundled with your application, this image loads from a URL. So this is great if you want to update images without having to update the app. Then lastly, we have data. Select this if the image URL will be dynamic, like coming from an API or a database. This is useful for displaying images that change based on user data or updates from a server, right? So the first example that I'll do is I'll use a source URL. So source URL, I actually have a variable created. So I'm just going to say URL. So when we say URL with these curly bracelets, it's going to allow us to be able to assign a variable. So here we're going to assign this variable code image URL. And let me show you what that looks like. So I have a variable code image URL, and the initial value is just a URL of an image. So there's a link to an image that is stored online. And once I do that, you're going to see that image is there. Right? We go back to our styles, and then we're going to give it a width of 100%. So it occupies the whole width. Right? So I have some padding here. That's why it's not touching the corners. And then for height, I'm just going to say 400 points. Right? We can see our image, but I want to show you another way of how we can add an image to this component. So let's go back to our data. So instead of this URL, let's remove this. Instead of that, we go to data, and then we click this image, right? And then we can upload an image from our machine. So this is the static way where we can actually upload an image, but then it gets bundled with our application. So right now I'm going to pick this office image. And as you can see, the image gets added. Now let's move to the config tab. So the config tab, we have component name. So this is the name as it appears in our component tree. Right now it just says image. I can say main image. And if I say main image, as you can see, it also changes here in our component tree. So that's what that does. Up next, we have resize mode. This determines how to resize the image when the frame doesn't match the raw image dimensions. The default setting is cover, right? So cover scales the image uniformly while maintaining its aspect ratio. So our image is going to look natural as it's intended when we're using something like cover. Cover scales the image uniformly while maintaining its aspect ratio so that both dimensions, the width and the height of the image, will be equal or larger than the corresponding dimensions of the view. So from my experience, when you're using cover, it's not going to show the whole image. Sometimes it's going to leave some certain parts of the image out of the image. So cover is trying to accommodate the view, right? It's trying to fill the view with your image. Up next, we have contain. And as soon as I click contain, you're going to see, right? So the image is now much taller. We can see more details than we could see in cover. But then the thing that happens is cover, it adds some white, on the left and white on the right, right? So contain is showing the whole image as it is, but it's not covering the whole view, right? So scales the image uniformly while maintaining its aspect ratio so that both dimensions, width and height, will be equal to the corresponding dimension of the view, right? But then the issue is it's leaving some white on the left, it's leaving some white on the... Then up next we have stretch, right? As you can see, it covered the whole view, but then it stretched the image, right? So scales the width and height independently, which may change the aspect ratio of the image. So you see the image is now, it's now looking a bit warped. It's no longer maintaining its aspect ratio as it was before, right? But then we're able to fill the view. Then we have repeat. So repeats the image to cover the frame of the view. The image will keep its original size and aspect ratio unless it is larger than the view, in which case it will be scaled down uniformly to fit within the view. As you can see, it's trying to cover the view. So right now the image kept its aspect ratio, right? We can see the whole image. But then this extra space that was left, it created another image to fill that space. So that's why it's called repeat. Lastly, we have center. So centers the image within the view along both dimensions. If the image is larger than the view, it will scale it down to fit inside the view. As you can see, it's centered the image, but we still have that issue. We have space on the left, we have space on the right. Finally, let's head back to the style panel. So we touched a bit on the style panel when we're giving our image a width and a height. But then now we're concerned with the blur radius. So the blur radius property adds a blur effect to the image with values from 1 to 100 for different blur levels of the image. So on iOS, you have to set the blur above 5 for a noticeable effect. Right? So right now we're just on web. Let's say 10 and see what the image looks like. Right? And you can see the image is now a bit blurry. So if that's something that you want in your application, this is how you do it. Right? Then we can play around with the size, the width, the height, minimum width, minimum height, maximum width, maximum height, margin, position, effects, borders. And yeah, that's it for this component. We've covered adding the image component, uploading an image of an asset, setting the size, configuring size mode, and applying a blur effect. Now you're ready to make the most of images inside your Draftbit applications. Thank you if you found this video helpful. Please drop a comment, please leave a like, and see you in the next one.